All right, welcome back and thank you for staying with us on KTV Primetime News. And as I told you before, we are streaming live this broadcast on KTV Kenya and on Facebook and on Twitter, KTV_Kenya. Right time for the discussion tonight. The 22nd day of March is commemorated as the World Water Day, with this year theme being groundwater, making the invisible visible. An environmental activist, Eric Brokovic, said that there is a whole fascinating world that exists underneath our feet that we don't see, therefore we don't relate. And that forms the basis of our discussion tonight, talking about the groundwater. And joining me for the discussion is Professor Monicah Muna, who is an associate professor at Kenyatta University. Thanks so much, Prof, for dedicating your time for this discussion.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Right, now let us just dive into the discussion, and perhaps we could start by the basic point of this day, celebrating the World Water Day. So what's the significance of commemorating this day to the world and to the country as well?
Okay, thank you. The World Water Day is a very important day, and this is a day that has been put aside by the UN. This day has been commemorated since 1993, 22nd of March. And it came about when the environmentalists realized the importance of water. We all know that water is a basic need. Actually, it comes second to oxygen when you think about human life and even plant life. And they realized that there's a lot of degradation that is taking place in terms of the water resource. And so they appointed this day. And basically the reason why we commemorate is basically to create awareness to the public. Let the people know the issue of water. We are always seeing water flowing. We feel like water is always there.
Sure.
But it is important to note that it is a resource that is getting exploited, and yet it is very key. Right. So it's basically a day to create awareness. Yes.
Now, when you're talking about the World Water Day, and we see for the 2022, the theme that was chosen was groundwater, making the invisible visible, which this theme is drawing much attention to the groundwater. So could you kindly just expound on this year's theme?
Okay, thank you. The theme for this year is on groundwater, and basically it's making invisible visible. And we all appreciate that we don't see the groundwater. So it's usually something that you don't think about it on a day-to-day basis. Right now, you're not thinking about some groundwater that could be down here.
Sure, we could say probably because it's out of sight, it's out of mind.
Yes, sure, because anything that the human mind is, the human being is not seeing, they are really not able to appreciate. And so the theme is to help us be able to recognize that groundwater is there. We are not seeing it, but it is there, and it is very, very important in as far as our lives is concerned. And actually, groundwater provides 90% of fresh water. So you can imagine most of the times we look at the rivers, we look at the lakes, we think that is where most of our water is coming from. But 90% of our water is coming from the groundwater, and yet we don't see it.
Sure.
So it is very important that we make this groundwater visible, and we can only make it visible by creating awareness, talking about it, so that now we have more people who are aware about this groundwater. Yes.
All right, that's so impressive, Professor. Now, looking at the problem of climate change and global warming, because this is one problem that is affecting lives, from every dimension of our lives. So, talking about water, is there a link really between water and climate change, and probably how does it affect humanity?
Yeah, there is a very direct relationship between climate change and water. And I would want to just mention two ways that climate change is affecting water. One of it is that as we know that the water that we use, like even the groundwater, the water that is in the rivers, the water that is in the lakes, we basically need this to be recharged. And it is recharged when we get rainfall. Now, what is happening with climate change is that the rainfall that we are receiving in some areas, it is less. In some areas, they are receiving more rain.
Sure.
And so this comes with two different challenges. So in those areas where we are getting less of the rainfall, what is happening is that we are not able to recharge the water. The water in the rivers, we need it to be recharged. So you find that the water resources are becoming more scarce. And what happens is that when we don't have enough rain, we have to produce food. And basically we then have to go to the groundwater or the water that is the water that is in the rivers to irrigate.
Sure.
And so we actually now we would be using more of this water than would have ordinarily used if we were having enough rains. On the other hand, the areas that are receiving more rain, what is happening is, I know you must have seen some of the reports, is that the sea level is rising.
Sure.
So what happens is that the sea has salty water. So what is happening as the sea level rises, the salty water mixes with the fresh water, and so it affects the groundwater or the aquifers that have fresh water. And when that happens, then that water cannot be used for irrigation. It cannot also be used for human consumption. So that is the two ways that really climate change is affecting the issue of water, and it is an issue that we need to keep talking about and seeing how can we be able to mitigate these challenges that are coming as a result of climate change as far as water is concerned.
Right. Now, at some point when you're talking about, the groundwater, that people really don't appreciate much the groundwater because it's something they're not seeing quite often.
Yes.
Because I think it doesn't really cross their mind because it's something they're not seeing, very often actually. So it remains to be, groundwater actually remains to be one of the essential sources of water. So what are the impending threats to groundwater, and what are the measures actually that could be safeguarded, could be enacted to safeguard the groundwater that you mentioned, that it produces the 90% of the fresh water that we are using? Okay,
there are two key ways that we can, two threats that we have. One of it is over extraction. Just like I explained when I was talking about we have drought and we need more water to irrigate, then we will need to get more of the groundwater for either the domestic use, for irrigation, for industrial purposes.
Yes.
So that is one of the threats. And the fact that if I have a well like in my farm, I don't pay for that money.
Sure.
Like we pay for the piped water. So what you find is that as human beings, something that we are not paying for, we can let it go to waste because it just flows.
Sure.
So that is one of the threats, the over-exploitation of this resource. Then the other one that is also very key is pollution. Pollution of the groundwater. And pollution has actually become a key concern. And this pollution comes from, the day-to-day activities that people are doing. Some of the things that we do, we don't actually even think that could lead to the issue of pollution. Like when it comes to the farms, we use the fertilizers, we use the pesticides, we use the herbicides. Now when it rains, these residues eventually get into the groundwater. Again, we have when it comes to the waste disposal. When we dispose the waste, even some waste that could be toxic, eventually this waste gets itself into the groundwater. So these are two main threats that we are having in as far as the groundwater is concerned. And I would say these are threats that just like the theme is saying, making invisible visible, you wouldn't think about it.
Sure.
Yes, because it's not something that you see directly. Yes.
So probably because you mentioned actually some of these threats, and maybe if I could probably just borrow from the aspect of exploitation, because people don't really appreciate the value that it's something they're not paying for.
Yes.
So how can really the government come into play to regulate some of the exploitation of this resource, and probably also on the mitigating the pollution effects on the groundwater? What are some of the measures actually that the government best can use to mitigate some of these threats to groundwater?
Okay, thank you. I think as far as the government is concerned, we have very good policies. If you read our water policies, they are excellent. They are excellent. So what the gap that is there is basically the implementation. The implementation of these policies as far as the national government is concerned, and now the county government is concerned. So that is where we have the gap. And I would also want to add that in as far as we would say it is a policy issue, it is also a behavioral issue. We have to think about the common person, myself as a citizen. How do I take care of this resource? Do I know about the issues? How many people know about these issues that there's a threat to groundwater or even surface water? Are we aware about it? So that then we can be able to take action to reduce on that. Yes. Right.
Now, well tackled, Prof. Now, water actually, at some point you mentioned that water is a basic need actually.
Yes.
Now, but we have some households in the country that are going without fresh water. They are not being supplied with sufficient fresh water, where we find women are now forced to walk kilometers and kilometers to fetch water for domestic use, fresh water actually. And on the springs, they are now, when they get to the springs, they still have to make long queues, wait for hours for their turns to fetch this water for domestic use. So again, does this really mean that we have failed as a country in terms of the policies, or where are we going wrong as a country? Because water being a basic need, it should be available for everyone.
Yes, I like I said, it's the issue of the implementation. It is the issue of the implementation. And what you find is that even the people who have the resource, the people who have the resource available at their disposal, they're also not taking good care of it. And so for us, a citizen, if, for example, like for us people in Nairobi, we have the water. And so you find that we freely can keep flushing our toilets, keep, washing our cars on it without thinking about, even if we have the money to pay for the water, really this resource, there are some people who don't have this resource. So that then we utilize it efficiently, so that even those other people can be able to get it. But I would want to say that the national government and the county government, really we need the political will as far as availing water to all households, as that is something that the government has a purpose to do. But I think we are lacking the political will to be able to do that.
So that, drags the aspect of politics, and as you are headed to the general elections, probably, I don't know, I'm trying to look at the manifestos of the leaders who are campaigning for these electoral posts, but there's no one actually coming out clearly in terms of water. Maybe also they don't know much about this, or probably what is it actually, because whatever the politicians are outlining to the common wananchi, they are not putting some of these strategies ahead in their plannings.
Yes, that is true, and that is why I said, as citizens, we need to make our leaders accountable. So if, for example, you are coming from an area that you don't even have this resource, are you making your leader accountable? Because it is that leader who has the resources that should actually be able to bring that water to the citizens.
Sure.
So I think one of the things that I would say is that we need to create awareness. We need to educate our local people so that the citizens know. The citizens are aware about these things, because if I'm as a citizen I am not aware about it, I will not be able to go asking for that. Maybe the leader needs to ensure that the water is provided to them. Sure. But what I would also say is that when you look at the issue of water, there is also inequality in the country. There are areas there is a lot of water, plenty of water. There are also areas where there is not much water, and you get surprised because these areas are not even dry areas. It's not necessarily the dry areas that people are not having access to clean water. So I think there is a need for us to create awareness to the citizens, so that then the citizens, when they have this awareness, they can actually be able to engage.
Right.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Prof. Now, in line with the Sustainable Development Goal number 6, which talks about water and sanitation for all by the year 2030, as a country, are we really on the right course in terms of this SDG number 6? And, even as we're moving forward, technology and innovation remains to be the best leverage in achieving some of these goals and plans that the world is having. What are some of the innovative measures that we can enact also as a country to ensure that by the year 2030 we achieve these SDG number 6?
Yes, thank you. This SDG number 6 is on sanitation and clean water that needs to be provided to the citizens. But unfortunately, when you look at our statistics, we have made, I would say, some progress, but we still have a long way to go. For instance, according to UNICEF, only 59% of Kenyans have access to clean water. And then we have about 29 people who have access to improved sanitation. So that means that there is still a huge number of people who don't have access to good sanitation. We also have a huge percentage of Kenyans who don't have access to this clean drinking water. So there's a lot that needs to be done. And like I said, when it comes to innovations, innovations are there. Sure. And researchers have done a lot of research to ensure that this the issue of sanitation, the issue of clean water is able to get to the citizens. But what is lacking is the resources to implement this. So really, when it comes to innovations are there. But the issue of getting these resources and ensuring that you have the resources equitably distributed when it comes to the citizens of the country, that is where we have a challenge.
Right.
Yes.
And then it also boils down to policy implementation, because actually someone told me that Kenya is one of the best countries on paper.
Yes, sure.
But the issue becomes implementation.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Now, just for the interest of time, Professor, as we wind up the discussion, what message would you be having for the general public? Because you mentioned at a point that it's very important, actually, that we create awareness about what there are things people really need to know. So what message would you be passing to the general public as we wind the discussion?
Okay. Thank you. I think for me, I have a very simple message to Kenyans. We know that water is a right to all citizens. But what I would want to say is that rights come with responsibilities. So as we ask to get this right, I would ask us to take responsibility in the small way that you are able to do at your level. For example, if you are using a tap, you are brushing your teeth, don't let the water keep running. You know, those small things that we can do. As you put some garbage, and know that that waste is going to groundwater, and that is what you are likely to take. So for me, I would say let us take responsibility even as we get water as a right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Prof. I really appreciate for your input on the discussion. I've actually seen some people online here saying they're really enjoying to follow the discussion, but I'm not seeing anyone asking a question, so I think they reserve that for another day. And I really appreciate, we really appreciate having you. In terms of creating awareness, I hope we will still have more sessions with you. At least people get to know what they need to know about the right of having access and the responsibility that comes with the right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So we really appreciate your presence, your input for that discussion.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
All right. Now, with that, we take another very short break here on KTV Primetime News. The moment we shall be coming back with more. So stay with us. See you on the other side.